After nearly 40 hours, I've almost finally beaten Far Cry 6, but was it actually a good use of my time? Not since Assassin's Creed Valhalla have I played an Ubisoft game in any real measure. Now, with Far Cry, I haven't really played it since Far Cry 3, so Far Cry 4, all the way up into this most latest iteration, Far Cry 6, I didn't really dive too much into. I dabble here and there, but not something I dove into. Now, with Far Cry 6, I spent almost 40 hours playing this game and, running around and liberating parts of the islands and either headshotting or kneecapping every bad guy that I saw. In this particular game, is it something that's actually worth your time to go through and play and liberate the island, or is your time better spent elsewhere? Let's dive into the review.
All of us. Alejo, don't!
Draftees must report
Alejo, get down!
You will join
Fuck Castillo!
Now, to dive into the review, we're going to start with the story, or I should say what story there actually is there. There's not a lot here, to be candid. There's a bad dictator oppressing the people, and it's your job to liberate things one checkpoint at a time. I mean, there's not a lot to this story. Now, you will be interacting with 3 different guerrilla groups that need you on their side before you can go and tackle the main regime and end the game. Giancarlo Esposito does a great job as Anton Castillo, and there's a very cold and calculated approach to the way he takes this particular character. If you saw him in Breaking Bad, it's a very similar performance. It's very cold and calculating, and you could see that he would be willing to do whatever it took to get what he wanted. Now, my main complaint with the story is there's just not enough of him in this game. There's a few interactions between the main character and the bad guy in this case, but there's not a lot that really ties you two together. So I think that this was a very big missed opportunity that, again, to avoid spoilers, that if they had those 2 characters interact more, there would have been a more potential personal stake in the overall story that would potentially drive you forward. So overall, the story I thought was meh. It was okay, but I really wish there was more of the bad guy in this particular game. And otherwise, I'll just let you experience the overall plot and the story that is there. But needless to say, there's a story and it pushes you forward in some way. And that brings us to graphics. Now, the graphics overall in this game, I played a majority of my time on the Series X with little spurts of the Series S here and there in a different room. Now, with this game, there are no real graphical options that you can do on the console version of the game. So don't expect any kind of FOV slider. There's no quality mode or performance mode. And the Series X does run at a 4K 60 majority of the time, with the Series S coming up at 1080p at 60. Now, for the most part with the graphics, I only ran into different frame rate stutters here and there, and it was usually when I was transitioning and diving into water, and you have that transition period between the regular and the water. But for the most part, I didn't really see too many stutters. The only other stutter I saw is when you were looking at the overall horizon and the overall vista of the environment, then you would end up seeing some kind of frame rate stutter. But by and large, the performance of this game was really good. The art direction is really good. It's not going for that super high realistic look. It's almost kind of like a cartoony look to it. So don't expect graphics from a realistic standpoint, but they did look really great from what they were trying to achieve. And you can look at it and just know that it is a Far Cry game, which is what they were really going for here. And that brings us to the gameplay, which by and large could potentially be the largest piece of any type of review. Is the game could look fantastic, but if it doesn't play very well, what was the point? And in this case, you're basically liberate this base, kill this person, fetch this stuff. There's really nothing new here in terms of overall gameplay, but at least you have the choice to do a co-op, which was really cool. So if you're looking for something new and you're looking for Far Cry 6 to deliver something new, you're probably not going to find it here. It is very much of the same here when it comes to gameplay. Not overwhelmed, not underwhelmed, just whelmed, I guess. Now, when it comes to the overall gameplay, you do have some customization, especially when it comes to the guns and the overall equipment that you're using. So for example, I ended up using an SKS for a lot of this game, and I went through and I upgraded it with silencers. I had a scope on it. You can do all these different things, and there's also some special weapons that you can get that have their own attributes, but you can't customize those at all. You also have the Supremos, where you can go and upgrade all those different pieces and how they give you different perks, and you can have different equipment options for those. I typically ended up using just the missile launcher that you get at the very beginning of the game, a majority of this game, just because I used it primarily just to shoot down helicopters, because those things can rain down fire on you. Also, you can go through the map and there's a whole bunch of different collectibles you can get. There's a whole bunch of different kind of gear sets you can get. And me personally, in the early stages of the game, I went through and got a parkour set, and I literally used that equipment for the entire game. And the reason being is with the parkour set, It gives you increased stamina. You can go ahead and slide, which then increases the amount of stamina that you can do over a longer period of time, and you can run faster when you're not equipping a gun. You can just traverse a lot faster when you had that set in. So the only time I changed sets overall is when for specific use cases, like I had to deal with fire, or I had to deal with poison, or armor piercing rounds from a particular enemy. Those were really the only times I ever really used any other equipment set. So for the most part, you can literally use an equipment set, both gun and gear sets, for the entirety of the game and be perfectly fine. Now the enemy AI in this game is mediocre at best, and I say that because you can go through the different ways of approaching a situation. So for example, you can go loud and just mow everything down that you want, or you can hang back and snipe everything and they don't even know what the hell's going on. So when it comes to the enemy AI, when you're going through and you're just mowing everything down, they will funnel into you for the most part like lemmings. And if you're hanging back and you're sniping everybody, and let's say for example they do see a body, they're like, oh, there's a body, let's go ahead and search around. And they'll start to generally come to you even if you had a sniper round, funneling the lemmings. The enemy AI, just not all that great. But overall, the enemy AI will try to flank once in a while, depending. They may go through a different door instead of the one that everybody else was funneling in. But over the latter half of the game, I had a high-powered sniper rifle, so I would just pick off everything from a distance and not even mess with it, and just get the added benefits of taking that particular area or checkpoint or whatever it was, and just get added benefits, because you do get more supplies when you are not detected in a lot of cases. So overall, when it comes to gameplay, it's generally fun. You'll be doing a lot of the same repetitious stuff. The enemy AI is basically dumb and they'll just lemming towards you. But I do wish the overall customizations of the weapons and the different aspects that you had access to, you just had more of it. You can even upgrade your car and all these different things, but I just wish there was more customization. But the gameplay loop itself was enjoyable. Next up is sound, and I don't know why this keeps becoming an issue in games, but I'm going to start with the most common issue I have run into multiple games at this point, and that is a sound bug. And in this particular game, it was no exception. And I'm sure you didn't see this one coming if you've seen a couple of the other reviews I've done. But after different things in the game, so for example, fast traveling or loading in a particular area, I just wouldn't hear any sound. You know, sometimes it would be like ambient sound would be gone and you could only hear your gunfire. Sometimes it was only the gunfire. Sometimes there was no sound at all. There was just quite a few sound bugs upon loading, at least at the version I was playing at the time of this recording, that it was just frustrating. So sometimes I would just have to reload and I potentially lose some progress, but it's something that ends up breaking the overall game, especially if you're using headphones and you want to be able to hear the game and hear the different nuances and be able to react in a meaningful way. Once you don't have sound, you definitely notice when that happens. Now, outside of the sound bugs, voice acting was decent. You had some that were good, some were not so good. Sometimes you had lip syncing issues. I'm not sure what happened there, but you did have them. And overall, the sound in this game was good, and especially when you got in the car, and if you're a fan of Latin music, had a ton of Latin music that you could play as you were going through either driving a car or going through some of the different areas of the map. They end up having the radio playing. That was actually very enjoyable for me, but overall sound, outside of the bugs, was decent enough and something that I say, you know, contributed to the overall environment and ambiance of the game. And that brings me to the overall replay value of this game. Now, there is a lot to do on this map. It's an Ubisoft game, so you'll have tons of stuff littering your map. That does infer that there is a lot filler in this game, and that is true. There is a ton of filler in this game. You could go through and do all the different side quests, you can do all the different, going through the checkpoints, liberate this, that, and the other, and you could go and do all those different things to 100% this game. Me personally, I'm not going to do that. I just don't have the kind of time to do that. But after you beat the main storyline, you can go and, you know, explore and do all the different things that you really want to. But for me, once I beat the game, I'm probably not going to revisit this game, and it also doesn't have any kind of game plus that, at least at the time of this recording. It does have some DLCs that have come out. I know there was a third one that just recently came out, and I'm not sure what the name of it was, but you had originally the Villains package that came out, and then you also had a Rambo package. If this is a game that you really do enjoy and you love the Far Cry series and you can't get enough of it, there is some DLC for you. For anybody else that ends up playing this game and wants to know if there's any replay value out of this game, there's not a ton out of it, but it does have that open world once you complete the story. And that brings me to a dad's perspective. And overall, I did enjoy this game. And as I mentioned, The last Ubisoft game I actually played was Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and then I kind of took some time off from Ubisoft. I did play a little bit of Watch Dogs Legion, but I just really didn't get into it, and the story was kind of bleh for me. So being able to play this game and having that gap in Ubisoft games allowed me to enjoy this game a bit more than I probably would have otherwise. Being able to play this game co-op contributed to this, because then I was able to play with friends and be able to help them in their story, and they can help me in this story, and that actually helped make this game probably even better than it was if I was just only playing solo. Which brings me to, would I actually pay full price for this game or not? And for me personally, no, I wouldn't say pay full price for this game. I would actually wait for a sale or even rent it on Gameplay if you're going that route. Me, I ended up going through Black Friday, so I got this game pretty much at half off. So for me, playing this game at 30 bucks, totally worth it, especially since I didn't have any kind of franchise fatigue and I didn't have Ubisoft fatigue at that point. It is a fun game. It definitely is fun if you're able to play it with friends, and it will give you plenty of gameplay, especially if you're playing it at a sale price or renting it via Gamefly. Now I want to hear from you. In the comments below, what did you think of Far Cry 6? Was it something that you enjoyed? Is it something that you've been going back to play as you got the DLC? Or is it something that you just not interested in? Why aren't you interested in? So make sure to put those in the comments below. And if you're still curious about what other games you can play, make sure to check out my review on Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'll see you over there.